So I've received a few questions on my indoor herb garden aquaponic system, so I figured I'd do a quick video explaining why I built this setup and how it works and the parts that go into it. So the first thing to understand of why I build an aquaponic system versus your traditional pots full of dirt and water and plants versus hydroponics versus aquaponics is sources of fertilizer. So for your standard pot of dirt with some, with a plant in it, the fertilizer actually comes, and the nutrients that the plants use to grow actually comes from the dirt itself. And eventually the plants will suck all the nutrients out of the dirt, which you have to start fertilizing the dirt then. In commercial applications, they use potassium nitrate and stuff similar to that in order to fertilize the plants. In the hydroponic systems, it's different because instead of the nutrition coming from the dirt, it's coming from the water instead. Aquaponics also comes from water too, but the source of nutrition is different. So in a hydroponic system, the source of nutrition comes from chemicals that you add to the water. And that, it ends up costing a little bit in the long run because you have to keep buying fertilizer again and again and putting it in your water system again and again. So, but in an aquaponic system, your source of fertilizer actually comes from the fish. Well, more specifically from fish poop. So when your fish eat, they poop, and that poop decays into ammonia as well as some other things such as carbon and stuff like that. And ammonia is toxic to fish. But beneficial bacteria in your aquarium will break down that ammonia and turn it into nitrites, which are also toxic to fish, but less toxic than ammonia. And then from there, beneficial bacteria will break down the nitrites into nitrates, which are still toxic, but less so. And more importantly, that is what plants use as nutrition. So from ammonia to nitrates, and that nitrates is how your aquarium feeds your plant bed. So pretty simple setup that I have going on here. I'll have some links down below explaining and talking about where I bought all the things I have, but I'll just go into a basic overview of how it works and what I have. So the first thing is obviously fish tank. This is a 29-gallon fish tank, and in it there are guppies, dwarf gouramis, cory cats, and shrimp. Right now I am battling a little bit of an algae issue, which I ordered some Amano shrimp that should be here tomorrow, which will hopefully eat most of that hair algae that's growing in there. So from there, fish get fed twice a day. They poop. That gets broken down into nitrates. And then from there, it goes up, it gets pumped from the fish tank by this pump that's back here. So that is an 800-gallon a minute water pump that I ordered off Amazon. Link will be below. And from there, that gets piped up through this pipe here into, I have a solids filter system. So this was just cobbled together. I went to Walmart and bought a plastic tub. It is a sugar storage container, and there's some filter sponges in there. Pretty much just the water goes up through this tube right here, then goes down. This valve controls the flow rate, because you don't want too little or too much flow, otherwise the siphon, that I'll get into later, will not work. And it goes down into the bottom through a pipe. There's a 90-degree elbow down here. All your solids get trapped down there by the sponges and by gravity. Then the water goes up, fills it up, then out through this slip-through bulkhead. Link will be down below to this pipe, down into the actual grow bed itself, and then that is where the water comes from for your grow bed. From there, the flow is actually controlled by something called a bell siphon. So what a bell siphon does, or an auto siphon as it's sometimes called, is it lets the water come up to a certain level, then it sucks everything out. So that is controlled by this right here. This is the actual bell of the bell siphon. So this was made just from some simple PVC from Home Depot and a cap also from Home Depot, and I used a Dremel to cut out holes in the bottom here to let the water go through it. The height in which you set that right there, that gap, is how low the water will drain down to. So right now with this setup, at about 3 inches it starts draining, then at 1 inch it stops draining. So the water is always going back and forth between 1 inch and 3 inches, just going back and forth because of this right here. And the way that the vertical, or how high the water it is held, is controlled by something in here. This black thing is just a media guard. This keeps all these clay pebbles from getting into the actual siphon system. I'll talk a little bit about that too. But the flow is actually controlled by this right here, which is the downpipe or the standpipe for your siphon system. Pretty simple setup. It's just a 1/2 inch pipe to a 1/2 inch coupler, cut so the actual height that this sticks out of the grow bed is how high up the water will be before it actually starts siphoning. So this is set, I can't remember my exact measurements off the top of my head, but it is set so that the flow will actually start siphoning at 3 inches. So that goes back in there, and that'll let everything come back up to the 3 inch mark. I'll put the siphon back so it starts siphoning again. From there, it just is it goes through another slip through bulkhead and to this pipe to an elbow, and the water, when it fills up, it just dumps from there right back into the fish tank. So it's a constant repeating cycle. Fish fertilize the water, bacteria fertilizes the water, goes up to the solids filter. Solids filter fills up the grow bed. When it gets to the 3 inch mark, which it will in just a moment here, then the siphon will activate and start siphoning and sucking water out of the bed. And then from there, it goes down to the bottom here, gets dumped back into the fish tank, and everything starts all over again. So, pretty simple setup. I've had a lot of trial and error to get here to this point. There's a lot of complicated things. I had a smaller pump before, but it didn't work out so well. That's why I had to step up to the 800 pump and just use a valve to control the flow rate. And that is, it's about to start siphoning. So right now the water is, you can see, at 3 inches. And if we look, it is starting to drain out of the downpipe. And then you'll see it'll build up the siphon and build up vacuum. Start dumping out. And then when it gets down to the 1 inch mark, which you can see it's coming down to right now, or it's at 2 inches right now, but it's getting there. And it will, the seal will break on the siphon because of the height of the water inlet and the bell, and then it will stop in a second here. Just a moment, there we go. It stops, and then it lets the grow bed start coming back up from where it stopped, back up to the 3 inches. Siphon will start siphoning again, and it keeps going up and down. The reason that you want the water to keep going up and down like that is because then that, one, allows bacteria to grow in your grow bed as well to provide even more bacterial filtration to turn ammonia into nitrites, into nitrates. And the other thing too is it keeps the plants from developing something called root rot, which is what happens if you leave your plants submerged, or the roots submerged all the time. They're not supposed to be submerged in water all the time, so this allows them to dry out a little bit and keep them from rotting. So you can see here, this has been going for a few weeks now. Dill has been going crazy, mint is tiny, and chives really haven't been doing that well, but everything else that I have planted in here is actually doing fairly well. So that is just a quick little video on how it works. I will put down below resources on building bell siphon setup and also the parts that I purchased. So I hope this helps, and have a great day.